A liberal politician who favors closer ties with the European Union has won Romania's presidential election. Nicusor Dan has an unassailable lead over the nationalist candidate George Simion. In a victory speech, Dan told supporters the process of rebuilding the country would start tomorrow.
We were on the streets last night, here in central Bucharest, and there was a really big crowd that had come to the headquarters of Nicusor. He's the mayor of Bucharest, but he's the man who has just won the presidential election here. It was an extremely tense few months, because if you remember back in November, the elections were run for president, but they were then cancelled because the man who won, a man called Colin Jesko, in the first round, it was found that there was evidence of Russian interference in the vote, so the whole thing was cancelled, and 6 months later, it was run again. And last night when Nicusor Dan announced his victory, amongst the chants, people cheering his name, people screaming with excitement, there were also chants saying, "Russia, don't forget Romania is not yours." So in many senses this was a vote against Russian meddling. It was a vote from Romanians saying this is their country, they'll decide their future. But over in the other camp, if you like, the camp of George Simion, the other candidate who came second, there was also frustration there. People couldn't quite believe that this was not the result they'd wanted. This had been a very tight race. They had expected to win it, but in the end, although George Simion came out and announced himself to be president, the results did not show that the exit poll was giving 54% to Dan, the man who eventually won. In the end, that was pretty much the final result, 54% to Nicusor and 46% to the hard-right nationalist candidate who has now lost this election.
And so what does this mean for the country now?
Well, it means that they have stepped away from the brink, if you like, of voting for a man who was very much Eurosceptic, who is a hardline nationalist, a man who has said very negative and insulting things about many people here in Romanian domestic politics, but also just this week described Emmanuel Macron of France as a man with dictatorial tendencies. I think if he had been president, you can see the kind of relationship, the kind of change in tone and relations between Romania and other members of the EU. I think that's one thing many people here were worried about. I think in terms of relations with Ukraine, things will now stay the same. The nationalist candidate has said he would stop military aid to Ukraine. There's a lot of talk about the need to push for peace for Ukraine, which is essentially what Vladimir Putin says, so that has changed in, or that will stay the same. Romania will remain a key ally of Ukraine, which is on its border. There is quite a lot of concern here about the war in Ukraine. Lots of people have been focused on that in the run-up to this election, people talking about the danger of the war spilling over into Romania, and that was kind of a key thing in people's minds as they went to vote. Ultimately, they voted for the candidate who will maintain the status quo, which is strong support for Ukraine, including military aid and also helping Ukraine with its grain exports to Europe. So in that sense, this vote was particularly important. Thanks for watching this video.